Notre Dame fans, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. It is Tuesday. My name is Brian Driscoll. I'm the publisher at irishbreakdown.com, and I'm joined by that guy over there, Vince Siderio. That is our football analyst. I had to think about it. Like the whole time we're doing the intro, I'm thinking about, okay, which direction do I point?
And I'm on the wrong side, so
it's okay. I got it right, though. I got it right. So that is Vince Siderio, our football analyst at irishbreakdown.com, and this is our Upon Further Review podcast. So there's a chance we may have to do a little bit of a basketball show tonight. I may have to do a little basketball show tonight. We'll have to see about maybe 8 o'clock. So
interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to see. So I wanted to get the Upon Further Review out of the way now. Wanted to get that done now so we could dive into this game because I finally had a chance to sit down, Vince, and watch the film. And there was a lot of things that we confirmed what we saw on Saturday night. There were some things that we saw that we have to say, okay, they've got to do a better job with this. But overall, Vince, as I sit back and think about it, this was such a huge win for Notre Dame because they were able to go on the road, get a win, face adversity, all those types of things. And yes, it was ugly. And we're going to talk about the fact that they've got to stop winning ugly because you can't keep doing that for 12 games.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because you're starting to play some teams that actually have good offenses, unlike most of the first half of the schedule.
But worse defenses.
Yes, but right now, Notre Dame's offense hasn't proven that they can score on bad defenses a whole lot. So, but they needed to get this win. They needed to go into the bye week and get this win. And that, to me, was the biggest takeaway from this game is whatever you got to do to get it done. You can fix all the warts. You've got an extra week to kind of sit down, take a breath, let the players go finish their, because they got midterms coming up this week.
Right,
let them focus on that, have them get away from football. Then you as coaches get in the lab and figure out what the heck you've got to do differently. Self-scouting has got to be a big thing this week.
Nailed it.
Making changes, not being stubborn on what you thought this team was going to be, but accepting what this team is. But you had to do that with a win behind you, and they got that done.
They did, and we talked about it yesterday with Sean. Love doing shows with Sean. He brought a lot to the show yesterday.
Throw it in my face, Vince.
I'm just saying. I know but we talked about that. Like it is going into a bye week, coming off of a win makes things easier, and we've said that before on other games. But the self scout is so important this week. You have to go back and you have to look at what you did well and build on it and stick with it. Don't stubbornly go after what you think you were supposed to be because you're not that. And I think that we can all agree that this isn't a 13 personnel type team, and they're not going to be this year.
12 personnel.
Or 12. Yeah, exactly. They're not going to be that team this year. Unless
you're going to use it differently than how you're using it now. And we'll get into that.
Yeah, you are a spread it out. Let's make some quick decisions. Get the ball out of your hands. That's what you need to be.
Right.
That's what they need to be talking about.
We're going to get into that when we get into the offensive part. I wanted to kind of talk big picture there, but that does transition well to the offensive part here, Vince. I knew you just couldn't wait.
Oh.
You always do that. We're trying to talk big picture, and you're just like, no, I want to talk offense.
Nope, offense.
Before we do, I just want to point out, too, if Aaron Harrison has a question about the things to sort out. Those are going to be what our next couple shows are going to be about. Obviously, we're not going to have, stacking ups and things like that. So we're going to have some shows this week that are going to focus on the offense and defense in regards to what are the things they need to focus on big picture. But today is going to be more about the Virginia Tech game and how it relates to some big picture stuff, because we are going to have some big picture conversations today. So, Vince, when I went back and broke down the film, there was really 4 takeaways for me that I looked at. Number 1 was about the scheme. Number 2 was about the quarterbacks. Number 3 was about the offensive skill. And number 4 is about the line. And those are the things that we're going to focus on that my opinion changed a little bit watching the film. The first one is the scheme, and it relates to what you were just referring to. This staff continued in this game, this stubborn insistence on force-feeding the run game on the opponent.
Yep.
And they were able to make some plays in this game because their dudes are better than Virginia Tech's dudes, right? But there's also a reason Notre Dame fell behind 29-21, right? Like, that's the thing we have to remember is, like, they fell behind 29-21, and their only touchdown drive in the second half prior to Cone coming in was a play after Tariq Bracey's interception where they got the ball at the 29-yard line.
And we've said over and over again, this offense is actually good at scoring off turnovers. That's one thing they can do.
Great job with that. and again, it's not getting field goals. It's getting touchdowns.
Yeah.
And so that was big. But again, a lot of that was because they were stubbornly insisting on we have to run the ball. And this is kind of what you were referring to and what we were talking about before, that you just could not wait till we got to the offensive part on. And that is, this is an example of the staff's focus on what we think we should be rather than what we are.
Yeah.
And, when Tyler Buckner first came in the game, they pushed the tempo a little bit, but it was Virginia Tech clearly was not ready for what they were about to do with Tyler Buckner. And this is what we saw against Purdue and Toledo. And this is what we've seen in the past. When a different quarterback comes in, the offense tends to move quickly.
Sure.
But what we also saw in this game is when a team gets more than 2 or 3 series and a halftime worth of adjustments to make a change, they can figure it out pretty quickly, and they shut down the offense. In the first half, Tyler Buckner went 5 of 8 for 101 yards and a touchdown, rushed for 26 yards and a touchdown. In the second half, he completed more passes to Virginia Tech players than he did Notre Dame players. That is not a shot on Tyler Buckner. That is once they were able to kind of figure out what you were doing with Tyler Buckner in the game, which was a run-centric offense.
Correct.
You got shut down. You didn't even sniff scoring until your defense made a play. And so a 14-13 lead turned into a 22-21 deficit, and you were lucky that it was 22-21 because you had the Tariq Bracy interception that gave you that short field to get that score. The offense wasn't even threatening. And I don't put that on Tyler Buckner. That is a coaching thing.
It's a scheme thing, yeah.
Insistence on and they went away from 12 personnel. They didn't go away from 12 personnel till Mitchell Evans got ejected. And it was almost kind of like, and I hate to say this, it was almost kind of like a blessing in disguise. It stunk for Mitchell. I thought that was a horrible call. And I got to give that kid credit. He's not ready to play right now. I mean, he is a former quarterback still learning to play, but the kid battles his butt off, and he's clearly shown them enough to say, hey, this kid can help us out. But I still say with some of these kids they're playing, it's like, you're putting him in a bad situation. People say, well, he should have done this, this, and this. Oh, this is exactly the point. You're asking a kid that played quarterback last year to know how to properly execute a down block in college with college rules about what you can or can't do on a crack and targeting and all those kind of things, right? That's what I mean when I say Mitchell's not ready. I've been impressed with what I've seen from him. Athletically, he's better than I thought he was going to be and all those type of things. But, you're putting him in there and you're asking him to be a blocker. This is my problem. If you're going to use Mitchell Evans, just like George Takis, he's a long, athletic kid. And you're trying to make him be Brock Wright or Troy Nicholas from, back in 2012. We're just blockers. And to me, that's a bad use of your personnel and how you're using your personnel. Did the same thing with Kane Barong when he came in. They just used him as a blocker.
Right.
Because they're not looking at their personnel. They're looking at a sheet of paper that says, this is what we like. We like 12. We like doing this. We like this. We like doing that because that's who we are. That's the Notre Dame way, right? That's what worked last year. This isn't last year's team.
No.
You don't have the line from last year. You don't have the tight end experience from last year. You have tight end talent, but it's very young talent that's more pass game oriented than it is run game oriented.
And your best tight end was on the sideline.
Right.
I mean, you got to remember that too, right? I mean,
when they were going 12 personnel, they were down to their second and third tight ends.
Right.
And then you look at your team and say, there's a lot more skill on this year's team. So that's kind of was my big takeaway is they won this game the same reason they won the Wisconsin game, same reason they won the Purdue game and the Toledo game and the Florida State game. They have way better players than the teams they're going against.
Yeah.
Way better players. And so that is my frustration. But at the same time, I'm hoping that how this game ended is a final wake-up call as they self-scout to say, why is it that every time we put Jack in one of these situations, he's money? He looks so much more comfortable than he does at the beginning of the game. And I think that to me, Vince, is the thing they got to figure out. That's the biggest takeaway this week. If they don't have that come to Jesus moment in regards to who they are as an offense,
right,
then we're going to see a lot of the same second half of the season. They're going to out-talent a lot of teams, but they're not going to be the team they should be on offense.
Right.
If they don't have that open-minded, are we really using this personnel the right way?
Yeah, because I think that the offense will still score. I think that they will have some success, but they're also going to have some massive failures, right? They're going to have 3 and outs, and they're going to have times when they just don't look good at all if they continue down this road, right? If they open it up a little bit, and by open it up, I just mean spread the formation out, get
adapt to your personnel.
Yeah, adapt to who you are, or who you should be, I should say. If they can do that, then they're going to have a lot of success offensively, and they're going to be able to score some points, and they're going to be able to take some of the pressure off the defense, which I think is huge right now because there's a ton of pressure on this defense to keep Notre Dame in games. And I'm not excusing some of the mistakes that were made on defense because there was too much pressure on them, but in past games, I feel like I was personally putting too much pressure on the defense to save their tush because the offense couldn't do it when they needed to do it, right? Mm-hmm. And the defense had to do it on their own. They had to put the team on their shoulders, etc. Take some pressure off those guys and then let them play, and maybe they don't make as many mistakes.
Right. It's like this was a Tyler Longbreak had 2 questions. He said, did they recruit more receiving tight ends with the expectation that they could teach them to block? And then he says, if they want to block with tight ends, why didn't they just recruit that build? Here's the thing, Tyler. This is the point we're making. I think Mitchell Evans is eventually going to be a very good blocker and pass catcher, and I think Kane Barong is eventually going to be a very good blocker and pass catcher. They're freshmen.
Right.
They're true freshmen. This is why we don't see true freshmen play a lot on the offensive line.
Michael Mayer is the exception to the rule.
Right. Because he was a grown freaking man. And even he has not blocked well this year. But this is why you don't see, except for 335-pounders, you don't often see freshman offensive linemen stepping on the field because you're putting them in the trenches and you're asking them to block college juniors and seniors.
Right.
It's a tough ask. But the point being, Vince, kind of like you said, is you have to build around your personnel, not what you liked schematically. And I think there's too much of that going on. And part of me wonders if that's a Brian Kelly insistence. We've got to get back to running the football and all this other kind of stuff. We've got to prove we can do this. I don't care if you run for 50 yards or 250 yards. Build around your talent, because I feel like they're trying to start run first and then build to the pass, when what we've been saying all along is build around your pass, and that's going to make your run game better.
Yeah.
And we've seen that at times. But what we saw in the final 2 minutes is exactly what we've seen in other games. When they spread the field, when they go quick, when they attack the perimeter, when they look. Some of the great pass protection they were getting at the end of the game. Again, part of it was Virginia Tech wasn't bringing 6-man pressures as much anymore and that kind of stuff. But guess
what? They were bringing 4, and Notre Dame's had troubles with 4.
But because Notre Dame was going empty, Notre Dame was getting guys that out in the short parts of the field that when pressure come, Jack could just dump that thing off. So that's kind of my frustration with the scheme part of it is I was not as impressed. I was impressed with what Tommy did early with Tyler, but I felt like, we talked about in the post game, there's a lot of different run concepts. They clearly had a Tyler Buckner run game package.
Yes.
And I've kind of felt like if you would actually use RPOs effectively, there's a lot of that stuff you could use with Jack Cohn in the game, but your insistence to not use RPOs, I don't understand why.
Once again, RPOs do not mean that the quarterback is running.
Right.
Okay. I just want to put that out there. I was sitting
before someone asks, is someone will ask.
I was sitting next to a guy watching this game, and he's like, they can't run RPOs with Jack Cohn. He's got cement feet. Blah, 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 blah. I go, RPO doesn't necessarily mean that, man.
It doesn't even mean it at all.
Come on.
It doesn't mean it at all. They ran 1 million RPOs with Jack Cohn at quarterback at Alabama last year.
Anyway,
so
continue.
We're going to get on that tangent again. So to me, that those are the things that they've got to stop being so dang stubborn.
Yes.
And go back to what they want to do. So it's like, let's talk about the quarterbacks, Vince.
Let's do that. Yes.
After watching the game, I was not as unimpressed. I was frustrated with what I thought the offense under Jack Cohn during the game. When I went back and watched it the second time around, when I look at the first 3 drives, I don't think Jack Cohn played that poorly. I think it was a typical, we're just going to run inside zone every play. And then they had mistakes. You had, I think it was the first drive, he hits Kyron Williams on the route we want to see, quick check down. They were playing off. He catches it, easy 5-6 yard gain, comes back because you've got a receiver not lined up, covering up the tight end, right? So now instead of it being 3rd and 2, it's now 2nd and 12, and you end up stalling out the drive.
Right.
Next drive, they get in the game. He does a great job staying in the pocket, hits Kevin Austin coming over the middle, 12-yard gain. You kind of get rolling. You get into Virginia Tech territory. You get down to 4th and 1. You line up, and you get a false start. Now you get a punt. I've yet to see the Jack Cohn mistake. He made the mistake on the next drive. His mistake was the climbing into the pocket, climbing right into the pressure when he actually was given a really nice pocket on that.
Yeah, he was. I agree.
And he's got to hit the check down. So that was his mistake. But I kind of felt like there's a lot of assumptions that the offense didn't move because Jack didn't play well. And I've seen a lot of people say that. And I fell victim to that on Saturday. And then they brought him into, they brought Buckner into the game, and Buckner let him down on that next drive. And what they do with Buckner in the game, they took a shot down the field.
Mm-hmm.
Because
they had
ball, right. They
with
got
him
the ball
you
outside.
Yes, you have to have some sort of a threat of the pass, and hitting that deep ball to Kevin Austin was like, oh well, now we got to respect the pass, and they did, and having a mobile quarterback obviously in the run game, obviously it keeps, even if there's just a bit of a hesitation by the defensive ends, it creates lanes. Right, because they're afraid that Tyler Buckner was going to pull. I mean, that is where having a dual threat quarterback is very beneficial to you, right? Because it makes guys hesitate, even just for a little bit, and that's why the run game was successful in the first half.
Mm-hmm. So, to me, when we saw Cohn come back in the second half, obviously he was put in a situation where they had to do those things, and he did it. But I still feel like whether you like Jack Cohn or not, I don't think anyone can make the case that 3 series in that situation were twice penalties that were – now, the first penalty, technically, I still put on Cohn. That was a mistake because you have to, as a quarterback, see that guys aren't lined up correctly.
Correct, absolutely.
Make that change. That is
we teach that in high school. That's the first thing you do.
Right.
Look around, make sure everybody's lined up right.
Right. So that's something they needed to do, but I felt like when we saw him in that second half, they've got to figure out a way to get him that level of comfort all the time. And until they do that, he's going to continue to not lead the offense. And to me, that's not a Jack Cohn problem. That is a Notre Dame, Brian Kelly, Tommy Rees problem. And that's going to have to get fixed. And then with Buckner, Vince, I wrote an article today at irishbreakdown.com, and the premise was we saw Saturday, in my opinion, we saw that Tyler Buckner is the future. In my opinion, he is the future quarterback. I was really impressed with some of the stuff I saw from him on Saturday. Throwing the ball down the field, being able to make big plays with his legs. Teams having to focus on him, which makes it a little harder to focus on Kyron Williams. We saw motions. We saw inside runs. We saw outside runs. We saw his athleticism. We saw option. We saw power read. We saw all those types of things. And then we also saw him, effectively throw the ball. But like we were seeing things in that game, we're seeing like jet sweep motions and all that. And now they never actually threw the jet sweeps, but at least they were getting some of the motions. But then they come out and they get to midfield and they spread the field out. They drop back and catch it and go. Virginia Tech was giving them shots like that the whole game. I mean, there was a lot of instances where they were playing 2 safeties, but the second safety was playing up and over top of the slot where the field go route was there a lot in this game. And that particular play was a boundary go route where they actually did have a safety off the ball, but they were playing a lot of robber, which we talked about going into the game. And robber is the safeties are going to step down. And so when I saw that, it's like, okay, yeah, they're really moving. I liked what I saw. They snapped that ball on that go route, they snapped that ball with 17 seconds left on the play clock, which means again they were moving. They were getting after it. They were moving. I don't remember them having a single snap where they were getting down to under 10 seconds on the play clock. They were.
It was like mini tempo, like it was. Yeah. It wasn't like Oregon tempo, but it was
the kind of tempo you need to have. Don't give the defense a lot of time to get lined up, and then. He makes that play, and then he comes down the next drive and showed even more things. And it wasn't just, okay, yeah, he's really athletic. But what I liked about the next series was, he was hitting some out cuts. I'm watching a play here, during that game where it was 2nd and 4. They went empty. They got Chris Tyree on a little out cut. Chris has got to catch that ball, but Tyler's got to throw a better ball. And those are the things where his game is still lacking. And it was kind of like what we talked about with Drew Pine. That experience that comes from when to throw with touch. You got a guy wide open in the flats, throw with touch. And then, the next series, he misses another one where he misses Avery Davis, right? So those are those maturity things that come from experience. He got that experience. That was important. But then you come out that next series, and again, what they do first play, they go empty, they motion it back into the backfield, they run a swing. There's all types of things you can, and a lot of that stuff you can do with Jack Cohn in the game. And again, we're talking about spreading the field, even with Tyler. Like you watch that play where he throws that seam route to Avery Davis. That was a similar play to what they hit later in the game with Jack in the game. So you can't really say, oh, well, gee, they did that because they were playing a different defense. They did that in the second quarter with Tyler Buckner in the game during a 2-minute, right? And it's because you spread them out. And I'm watching it now. They lined up, snapping the ball with 20 seconds left. Why do you wait till 2 minutes to do that, right? I mean, that stuff is there. That's the frustrating thing. Is like it's there all the time. I was waiting on them to go to it when you're watching the game.
Yeah.
Then you get to the second half, and we saw less of that in the second half. We saw more in the second half. We saw more a more methodical offense, I guess is the right way to say it. Where now it was more 12 personnel. It was a lot more of that kind of thing. And they had opportunities. Virginia Tech had more opportunities, in my opinion, to kind of like they just were better prepared. Like I'm looking at it now. The first play on offense in the second half, they're in 13 personnel.
Right. Yep.
Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Why?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just some of the stuff they did to me just. It was like, what are you doing? And then I'm watching this 3rd and 4 call, and they snapped the ball with 6 seconds left. Right now, again, guy was open. He's got to hit that out cut to Avery Davis. But you could just see that the things that Virginia Tech was doing to him pre-snap when they were allowing him. I'm watching this play. Virginia Tech walked their nickel down. They walked their linebacker up like they were going to bring an all-out blitz, and Tyler's mind just immediately sped up. Like they're bringing a blitz. I got to immediately speed this thing up. And so he rushes a throw. But they weren't blitzing. That's what you do to a freshman quarterback when you have time to sit at halftime and adjust. So a lot of that stuff was Tyler's inexperience and a kid that hasn't played football in 2 years.
Yeah, and it sped him up, and his accuracy was not as good, obviously, in the second half. He was overthrowing some guys. That one that should have been picked off to hit the guy in the numbers, the receiver was open.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
the 3rd and 4th I'm talking about. Yeah, I mean, Avery,
a great read.
Yeah.
And he just overthrew
and it
him.
was a throw he hit twice in the first quarter, in the second quarter.
So we know he can hit it. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
He hit the outcut to Avery Davis for the 8-yard gain on 2nd and 8, and then he hit him again on the touchdown.
And the pick six, I love the fact that they gave us the all 22 on the TV copy because it showed he wasn't working the right side of the field because the field side was wide open for a first down, and he threw it into coverage and he stared his guy down and it was a freshman mistake, right? So, but all of those things are correctable, right? And that's why you said at the top of this quarterback conversation is that we saw why Tyler Buckner is the future. He's just not the full-time present.
Right.
And I think that's a really important distinction to make.
Right. But man, when he was on, it was
fun to watch. I mean, it was good football. It was fun to watch. It's just they have to be able to combat the defense's adjustments with offensive adjustments. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Right. But yeah, and on that particular play, people have said about Deion Colsey, what was Deion Colsey doing? Yeah, Deion was not sure what his post-snap conversion should have been.
Agreed.
He's supposed to take that vertical. So when that guy squats, Deion's supposed to run by him. That's so it looked like he had like a hitch. Well, a hitch when you run that particular play, most teams will convert a hitch to a vertical route, right? And so they had a press corner. Right. And the guy bailed and Deion didn't know what to do.
Right. Freshman
and
mistake.
So he kind of got caught into a little bit of a tight, a situation where he wasn't sure what to do. He's got to execute that. Right. And you got to do a better job as a coach, getting him ready to play. And then Tyler obviously didn't read it correctly, but I still feel like that's the kind of mistake that Tyler Buckner needs to make to learn from. Again, he was playing with children in high school. I mean, like, Like he looked like that grown up that's like playing like big time, that's like acting like he's still in high school, dominating when he's playing like against his family at Thanksgiving. He's playing against the little 10, 11-year-old nephews.
Telling everybody he could throw the ball over the mountains.
Right. And he's like stiff arming them and running for, like that's what Tyler Buckner looked like in high school. I mean, he was just a man amongst boys. So these kind of things he needs to learn from. So I actually like that Tyler got a lot of experience on Saturday night, and he got to have Brian Kelly in his face, and we saw purple face Brian Kelly on Saturday night, which again, you could see it from the behind. You could see the camera angle. You could see his cheeks are like totally purple. He was losing it, getting in coaches' faces, and talk about that little sideline fight here once I ever get some more intel on it.
Yeah,
but,
I didn't know. We saw none of that.
I watched it happen. Yeah, I watched. It was just strange. So I'm just trying to find out who was involved before I get too much into it. But based on who I think it was, it's going to be interesting. But anyway, I think when I look at this, Vince, I feel like we saw some things from the quarterback position that if they handle this bye week correctly, gives me some serious excitement about the second half of the year. Yeah, because that gets me to the final point. When the offense is built around them, you cannot stop these skill players. You may be able to take a Kevin Austin out of the game, but you can't take him and Lindsey and Avery Davis and Kyron Williams and Chris Tyree. And then Chris Tyree goes down, and they play Logan Diggs, who we've been saying, why isn't he playing? And lo and behold, Logan Diggs looks like he's a –
he looked like a seasoned vet. Like he did good things.
How does it take an injury to get that kid some playing time?
Right.
Like, here's what I would rather do. This is the frustrating thing. How are you going to watch what's going on at how you're using your tight ends? And again, this isn't just about the way the talent of the tight ends. I think it's a talented group, but how you're using your tight ends. How can you justify that that's a better personnel group than putting two receivers outside or Michael Mayer and a receiver outside? Again, not this game. So that's why I say two receivers. In the future, it'll be Michael Mayer, but two receivers outside, Kyron Williams in the slot, Chris Tyree and Logan Diggs in the backfield.
3 running backs, baby.
Right, if everybody's healthy. But see, now you can really spread the field because you got 5 athletes that you can throw the ball to.
Absolutely.
Right? You could put Kyron and Chris Tyree out slot, and you have Logan in the backfield. And Logan also showed that he can catch the football on Saturday. So I just don't know how you don't better use your players. And that includes when you're in 12 personnel, please throw the ball to the second tight end. Hey, look, George Tech, as we've always known, can catch the football.
Yeah. That was his first target, right?
Of the season, yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, of the season, yes.
Yeah, I believe so.
I said that to somebody else. I was like, that was his first target. Maybe they should throw it to him a little bit more. And they're like, no, they've tried to throw. No, they haven't. That's the problem.
I don't believe he's had a target all year. I cannot remember one.
Exactly.
Cannot remember one. So, but that's my final takeaway, Vince, is, I mean, they were getting good separation. They were getting separation even against the bet. We said before the game that I thought this secondary outside of Ahmed Gardner was better than the Cincinnati one.
As a whole.
Yeah, Jermaine Waller showed he's a pretty good player too. But we saw what happens when Kevin Austin executes a technically sound route. You can't guard him.
Mm-hmm.
You can't guard him. You can't guard him and Braden and Tyree or Williams and Avery Davis.
Right, exactly.
It just – and then here's the thing I like about the receivers too. I thought they battled. They made some mistakes. Blocking wasn't always sound, but they battled. I thought that's the one thing I'll take away from this team, and we'll transition to the final point that I know you want to talk about, Vince, and that's the play of the offensive line. In my opinion, we saw very, very, very little improvement technically. We saw very little upper body technically. We saw very little improvement from an assignment correctness standpoint in the run game. We saw 2 things. We saw better pass pro, which I think coincides with Kristofic and Joe Alt being in the game. And number 2, this group played their butts off.
The difference from last week we said, the O-line, they played hard, whatever. But the increase for me from 2 weeks ago, last week to this week in firing off the football, keeping your legs moving, driving off, the difference is night and day. And I am in no way saying that these guys are ready to be crowned like the best offensive line in the country by any stretch of the imagination.
It's relative to what they've been.
Yes, it's relative to what they've been. But these guys battled. Remember 3 weeks ago, we're like, man, I just want 5 tryhards.
Just get a body on a body and play hard.
They did that.
And look what happened.
They did that, and they had success doing that.
The second best defense they've played on.
And I feel like they fed off of each other on that too. Mm-hmm. I felt like Kristofic and Alt played well as a duo, I thought they worked well together. I don't know if it was just a communication thing or what. I was impressed with the physicality of the front and the drive and the get off. And I've been complaining about their get off since day one, and it's been terrible. Now, there's some technical things that they still need to work on. For example, the tight end. So Takis, he had a block one time, and he's supposed to be sealing the edge. He was too much stalk blocking and not enough get in and drive, right? Now, it was successful. He was between the ball and his man, which is, I mean, if that's what we're looking for, then we got it. But it was too much arms extended for me. I want to see more get inside and drive. So a few things like that. But man, as I watched back, they actually played better to me than I thought that they did watching it live. I was just because I've been so critical and I've been watching these guys like a hawk. They played better. They played, and again, not technically sound yet, but man, all I want is for you to just find somebody and just drive them.
The one technical thing that they did improve on, that's why I said upper body.
Yeah.
Is they did. I mean, we saw Kane Madden working his feet through contact a lot more in this game.
Yes.
You know, we saw Kristofik do that. And there was, so the reason that matters is so Kristofik's not a real powerful dude. He's more of an athletic guy. I think that's why his pass pro is good. But what we've been seeing in the past is Zeke Correll would hit a guy, and we've seen it from Kristofik too. They'd hit a guy, stop their feet, and they get knocked back. What we saw on Saturday was there were times where Kristofik hit a guy and they stalemated, but he kept working his feet, so they just stayed there.
Okay.
And Kyron Williams like, okay, I got this.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, he can fit into very small windows, man.
And so can Logan Diggs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can Chris Tyree.
Right.
And that's the thing is like when you keep a body on a body, there were so many runs in this game, and this is where I thought the backs were amazing. Their patience. And kudos to Lance Taylor for because Kyron was kind of rushing and pressing and like making, he got them ready to play. The patience that they showed to kind of like let those guys get a body on a body, let them get a little bit of movement, and then go.
Find your spot and go.
Yeah, like there was the 10-yard run that Logan Diggs had. We talked about in the postgame show, but he's kind of slowly going downhill on inside zone, and then he sees the backside kind of washing them down, and he just takes it out the back door for 10 yards. I'm like, oh, love it.
That's what zone's supposed to look like.
That doesn't happen last week or the week before, before that, because that backside guy was blowing the guard up into his face.
Yeah.
Right? And so the try hard in this game was there. The body, staying engaged, body on a body was there. And they weren't dominant. They weren't great. They can still play a lot better. There's still some scheme problems on the inside zone. You saw it on one play where the guard just kind of turns on inside zone, but Kyron's forced to take it outside the guard. So the D tackle just kind of comes off and tackles Kyron for a 6-yard gain. If they're blocking that correctly and Zeke's got more of that guy's, outside shoulder or at least squared up on him, that guy can't get off to Kyron, and Kyron's got room to go, right? But the try hard was there. The effort was there. On that same particular play 2 weeks ago, Zeke Correll gets beat, and the guy tackles Kyron for a 1-yard gain or 2-yard loss because he's driven off the ball. But the try hard was there. The body on a body was there. And when they needed per time, so late in the second quarter when Buckner was in the game, they gave him time. Second half, when Cone went in the game, they gave him time.
Yes, they did.
They got time when they needed time. They opened up holes, needing holes, with one exception. The 3rd and 1 play, and it looked kind of like they weren't really sure what was going on. I think that was it, like they weren't necessarily they didn't really know what was going on. But that's the thing for me. That was the thing I was encouraged by Vince from this group was just they battled, right? And to your point from way earlier, if they can give me that kind of effort and that kind of just stick a body on a body, second half of the year, the run game's going to get better,
right?
No, even if they don't change a thing, the run game's going to get better. Pass pro is going to get better.
You can work with that offensive line.
Yes.
There's things you can do.
Even with the stuff that they're doing schematically we don't like.
Right.
But if they do that and make some adjustments, and again, this isn't about overhauling your whole offense. It's about placing an emphasis on things you're already doing, but making that more of your primary as opposed to your secondary, which is what those things are now. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So that was a great sign for me. And look, Josh Lugg has had 2 awful games in a row against Wisconsin and Cincinnati. awful
Yeah.
games.
Worse than I've ever seen him play.
This was his best game of the season.
Yeah, he played well today.
I mean, there was one particular play where him and Takis took the right side of the line and drove him like 5-6 yards off the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I went back and watched because like maybe because I said it on Saturday night. I was like, maybe it wasn't as good, but it just was so much better than we've seen in the past. It looked like 5 to 6 yards. And it was like 5-6 yards off the ball by the end of the play.
Yeah.
To see him battle back after just 2 brutal games. Now he had that stupid hold that ended up, it didn't matter anyway because they ended up calling a clipping on that play, which I think by rule, that's technically clipping, even though it wasn't. He kind of fell on him, but whatever.
I don't know that he even touched him.
The officiating was
I don't know,
piss poor in the game. And it was both ways. There was somebody actually brought this up in the chat, but I was watching the game last night. There was a punt play. Now it wouldn't have mattered. It would have given them 5 extra yards, but they had 2 number 26s on the field on a Notre Dame punt return. Notre Dame had 2 26s on the field. Xavier Watts and Leo Albano.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just like, how does that happen? Like that's one of your primary jobs as a
exactly
special teams coordinator.
That's
to do that.
That is so elementary. I'm sorry. Yeah. That's so elementary. And if you really, 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 really want 2 of those guys on the field at the same time, give them a different number because you got plenty to choose from.
You've got to know
not
that
big of a deal.
I mean, Xavier Watts' number's been 26 for several weeks now.
Right. And Leo's a walk-on. Give him a different number.
Right.
I mean, it just
right.
Yeah. Brandon had an interesting point here. He said, Brian, do referees watch film of the games that they've previously reffed?
I think the good ones do.
Yeah.
I think the good ones who look back at calls in their head that maybe like, gee, I think I might have got this hold wrong. Or, man, I didn't feel good about that clipping penalty we called. Let me go back and watch that. Or if concerns are raised by the opposing coaches, I think the good ones will go back and watch, yes.
And I will say this, Brandon, and this is from personal knowledge, right? At the high school level, they're the good crews. They will hand you their business card that's got all their names on it, and they will be like, hey, send the huddle film, which is the game film, on using huddle, right? That's how we trade film now. They send us the huddle film when the game is over. And this is pregame. So they actually go through it and they watch it and they make sure, that they're learning from their mistakes or if they miss something or whatever. So to echo what Brian said, the good ones do. They study their craft, which you should.
Right.
I would hope that college ones would do that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So, but I thought Kane Madden's a guy that's embattled. I mean, he had a lot of mistakes. I mean, again, he just stops his feet too often. But I thought he played hard.
Yeah,
he gave great effort.
I agree. This was his best game to me.
That.
This is his best game.
Yes. Now, again, I've seen him play a lot better at Marshall because his technique's always been better. But again,
fair enough.
Play hard. Play hard. Now, they also benefited. I was surprised. Virginia Tech. This is something I noticed when I broke the game film down. Virginia Tech didn't run a whole lot of stunts in this game, Vince. Did you notice that?
Yeah,
it was a lot of twists.
What they were doing is they would put guys on the line and they would drop some guys back.
Yeah,
or, things like that. But it wasn't a lot of
the
movement.
line games that has been giving Notre Dame problems. And I so that's still. I was hoping that like when I went back and watched it, I'd see them picking up twists and stunts. They didn't really do a whole lot of that.
They didn't. You're right. And that's still an issue, or at least a question mark. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So we got to see if that's going to get better. But look, man, they took what Virginia Tech did and they did a great job. I mean, effort-wise. And again, a good offensive line coach is going to look at this game and say, gee, man, we still got a lot of technical stuff we have to improve a lot. But still, even with that, they ran for 180 yards against a pretty good Virginia Tech defense. Yeah. And got decent movement, but again, they just kept a body on a body, and that's what I love. So overall, offensively, Vince, I think from a player standpoint, I was even more pleased with the game than I was live. I thought that offensive players came out and battled. They did not. Like when Virginia Tech went up 10-0, you didn't see a lot of head hanging, right? You didn't see a lot of, here we go. They came out that next series, punched one right into the end zone. When Tech went up 29-21, Notre Dame had turned the ball over. And when they came out for that final drive with Jack Cohn, you didn't see a lot of – I mean, they ran out on the field with some pep in their step, like, let's go do this.
Yeah, agreed. It's a lot of
that tells me a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of for lack of a better term, it's a lot of butt slaps. Like, hey man, great effort, good job, way to be. Let's get in the film and let's clean some stuff up.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
that's how I felt about this game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I will never fault. I can't fault the effort on the offensive side of things.
Right.
The effort was there and it was great. I pulled this up just because we're talking O-line. He says, Sean Walker says, do you think Joe Alt finds another role on this O-line after Fisher returns? You and I have talked about this. We both think that Fisher could be a really good tackle, but an even better guard when it's all said.
Yeah. So here's a couple things that I'm curious. Number one, I don't think Blake Fisher is going to be coming back this season from what I'm told.
Right.
So we have a whole off season to figure this out.
Yes.
Right. And so if they're smart, they'll realize that, look, three of our five best linemen for 2022 are Joe Alt, Blake Fisher, and Tosh Baker. And so we got to
get them all on the field.
And you can make a case Michael Carmody needs to be in that conversation too. As an interior guy, you got to move somebody. You know, what I wouldn't mind seeing a scenario in which Blake Fisher, like you said, moves to guard or moves to right tackle or whatever the case may be. And then you look at Christoph and say, okay, how can we best get him? Is he going to be Jarrett Patterson's replacement at center? Do you leave him on left guard? You know, but then you say, okay, well, this is the whole thing is, okay, so three tackles to me that have starting caliber talent: Fisher, Alt, and Tosh Baker. Then you have a lot of interior guys that to me have, you know, Zeke Correll obviously played a lot. Andrew Kristofic, who is coming off his most involved and best game as well.
No doubt.
You're coming off of, you've got Rocco Spindler, right, coming back. I mean, there's Quinn Carroll is a guy. So they're going to have, as we've said, talent won't be a problem next year. The question is going to be, can they do the things they need to do to get those guys ready to play?
Right.
And so that's the thing. But
there's going to be options.
You're on a time limit today, Vince, so I do want to get into the
and we do have a super chat. I don't want to lose it, so I want to throw it up from Dan. Thank you, Dan. Very much appreciated.
Oh, yeah, this was a good one.
With 2 weeks to prepare, do you think Notre Dame will stick with Buckner as the guy going forward with Cone coming in for cleanup like Reese did for Golson?
I've heard a few people mention that to me. I sure hope not.
That's not the one I would like to see either.
Number one, Golson was a redshirt freshman. If Tyler Buckner was a redshirt freshman, he'd be further along than he is right now. I'd say yes. I'd be fine with that. But you can't be in that scenario. Number one, this defense isn't as good yet as that defense. You can't rely on that yet. Number one. Number two, I still feel like if you're going to build the offense, look, if the offense is built personnel-wise and schematically the way it should, I still feel like Jack Cone is the best quarterback on this team. And we've seen it. You know, I mean, look, can we be honest about something? What's Notre Dame's record right now if Jack Cone's not the quarterback? And people can give him all the hard time they want, whatever the case may be. You don't beat Florida State if you don't have Jack Cone, in my opinion. Jack Cone comes off the bench against Toledo and leads them on that touchdown drive. And then Saturday night, I don't know if Tyler Buckner can lead them down on 2 touchdown drives at the end of that game.
Sure.
As talented as he may be, they had 5 drives in the second half. 5 drives of Tyler Buckner. They had 2 interceptions, 2 punts, and a touchdown on a 29-yard drive. Right? So Jack Cone deserves some of the criticism he's gotten.
Sure.
Because he hasn't played well early enough in games. But the fact is when you look at when this offense has been at its best,
right,
this season are instances where he was the quarterback. Outside of maybe a couple, like the drive against Toledo with Buckner when they were backed up with their own 4, that was a phenomenal drive. A lot of it was about Tyler. But a lot of it is, you know, if you look, Tyler's 2 best drives this season were his first drive in a game when the team had been, you know,
right.
We hadn't seen a lot.
Element of surprise a little bit. Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at, Vince.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
But that's a really good question. I still think it's and we'll talk about this more tomorrow. But we'll answer that question, Dan, in more detail tomorrow when we talk about the offense as a whole. So Vince, let's get to the defense. This was just as weird of a game breaking it down the second time as it was watching it live. And I would say, you tell me if you agree or disagree. I'm going to say it right now.
Okay.
I thought Notre Dame dominated Virginia Tech on about 80% of the snaps Saturday night. Dominated. It's just, as we've said, when they make mistakes, they make them big.
They don't do anything half-ass.
No. They don't make mistakes to give them 5 yards. They give them mistakes to give them like 20, 30, stuff like that. I just thought it was at times a poorly executed game plan. I thought early in the game, I thought Notre Dame had Virginia Tech's number. They were dominating on the edge. Quarterback had nowhere to go. They were trying to run some traditional stuff. Didn't work. Virginia Tech made a couple adjustments. Now, the first touchdown drive, you have Justin Adamiola turns a tight end loose on a wheel route. Then you have Tariq Bracy falling down and Isaiah Pryor not getting enough depth underneath a route on a play action, which allows for big play. It's there. It's like, look, it's execution, right? It's execution. You got to execute better. And then Virginia Tech realized, hey, we can't run off tackle. We can't run between the tackles on them. Their running backs had 38 yards rushing on 16 carries in this game. The traditional runs were not there.
Absolutely
correct. Virginia Tech did some stuff with the run game that I thought was creative with the backup quarterback. They brought the backup quarterback in the game.
It was a Tyler Buckner package, essentially. Right. I mean, he's going to run the ball. I mean, they had him throw the ball once, and it was like, okay, we see why he doesn't throw the ball.
Right. He hadn't done something like that since the Middle Tennessee game, and that was him coming off the bench.
Right.
Like they had never shown that like in the middle of a game, right? That was new, and it was good coaching. To me, that was smart. By Virginia Tech, they were getting beat inside, so they said, "Hey, we got to get outside." So they ran a couple jet sweeps and a jet sweep and a shovel, and it got them some yards. And so, I mean, that's good coaching. Hey, we're getting our butt kicked up front. We're getting our butt kicked in the trenches. So let's figure out another way to get something going in the run game. Imagine that.
Yeah, right.
Who'd have thunk it? They're kicking our butt up front, so let's run some jet sweeps and shovels. And they did a good job of out leveraging Notre Dame.
Yes, they did, and it was a poor job of Notre Dame on those plays as well, in my opinion. They were allowing themselves to get blocked. The block destruction was
right.
Very poor on the edge.
So like early in the game, they tried to run like a screen, like a traditional perimeter screen, and Notre Dame blew it up.
Yes.
Jack Kaiser was out there. He got a big hit, and that forced the guy back inside to Kyle Hamilton, who blew it up. That's why they went to the jets, because when they went from the more condensed alignments, they got Notre Dame reduced.
And they were able to block them off.
And they were able to block down and get out leveraged.
Yep.
And then on some plays, the second safety is a problem right now, the last couple games. And the second corner has been a problem. So that's where personnel is not getting it done. There was a particular play where and sometimes the other team makes good calls, right?
Sure.
So there was one particular play where Notre Dame ran a double inside blitz and Virginia Tech was running away from it. That's going to happen sometimes. That's a good call. You got us. Right. But even on that play, Houston Griffith has to come down and blow up the lead blocker, and he came down and then broke down and then engaged the guy as the quarterback runs right by him. You know which play I'm talking about? It was a second quarter. He's doing too much of that in the last couple of games. I thought he was doing a good job in runs. I mean, you and I praised his run support effort the first 3-4 games of the year. He was doing he was coming down playing hard, but he has been far too passive.
He's run into blocks. Like he's run right into him.
He had a huge play in this game, though. I will say this. Making that tackle on the one, I think it was a jet sweep that got him down to the 2-yard line when it was 7-0. Pushing that guy out before the goal line was huge because they ended up having a goal line stand.
Right.
And Riley Mills made a great play on that. Kurt Heinisch, who was a monster in this game. Kurt Heinisch they could not block. And this is one of the better interior lines that Notre Dame's going to play this year, Virginia Tech, with Brock Hoffman at center and Lacita Smith at guard. This is one of the best center guard combos Notre Dame's going to play all year, and they could not block Kurt Heinisch in this game, or Jason Adamiola, or Riley Mills. So, but that was a huge play because they ended up forcing a field goal. If they fall behind 14-0 there, timeout. Eric Ward, I love you, man, but you got to stop coming with constant negativity. Right? Just stop, take a deep breath, and just listen for a while. Okay. But to me, defensively, I thought that was a big moment. But outside of that, the second safety and the second corner positions they got hurt in this game. And a lot of it's just about not being aggressive enough and not playing with certainty. You're starting to see Tariq Bracy erring on the side of playing too far off because he's afraid of getting burned. That's what happened on that one out cut. Right, the one he fell down on. He was playing so far off the ball because he didn't want Trey Turner to run by him. That's a guy not playing with confidence. right? He's late driving on routes. That's a guy that's, I think, afraid of like a double move. He's not playing with confidence. Now, he did a great job on that outcut. Stepped underneath it, went and picked it off. Great play. But to me, Vince, that was the thing for me. I thought contain issues. I thought tackling issues. I thought leverage issues were huge. I thought Notre Dame made some adjustments, and Virginia Tech did a nice job of counter-punching. To me, it was a well-coached game after the first half a quarter, right? I thought Virginia Tech did some things. Notre Dame had to counter back, and it just kind of went back and forth. But at the end of the game, I mean, really what hurt Notre Dame in the second half was the contain. Just, giving up those plays where you lose contain on the quarterback really proved costly to me.
It was the mistakes, and I know you probably want to highlight this a little more specifically, but there were times when two guys would go to the same gap.
Yeah.
And that was a mistake. I mean, there
was that one time too on that 1/3, and there was like a 3rd and 6 where the quarterback scrambled. Do you remember this? They were in their nickel package, and Jason Adamiola and Bo Bauer.
I know exactly which one you're talking about, because I wrote
running away, like they're running towards the back, like they both thought they had the same responsibility, and it just opened up a gap.
Yes.
Like if just one of those guys does his job correctly, and I don't know which one was supposed
and it was
to.
Hamilton, right, Bauer, and Justin Adamiola all went that way.
Yeah.
And
I didn't see Kyle. I just saw that
he was involved too. He was over there too. And it was because I watched it like 4 times. And I was like, I can't believe 3 guys all went to the same gap. Like it was clearly a mistake by somebody, maybe 2 guys. I don't know. But yeah, they left. They all went to the right, and it left the left wide open. And that's where the quarterback stepped up and ran. And he had all kinds. Look, when you draw up things on defense, all gaps are covered. Right? I mean, that's just the way it is. And if 2 guys are going to the same gap, somebody made a mistake, and Virginia Tech made Notre Dame pay for a few of those. Yeah. There were times where Notre Dame would be very late in doing kind of a twist or coming around the backside, and I don't know if they were supposed to do that or if they were just doing it because they thought they could get into the backfield a little bit better, but they would abandon an area, and then Virginia Tech would just go right at it. I mean, They did a good job with that. Burmeister did a good job because, remember, we told you before the game, he wants to run the ball. He's a run-first guy, so if he sees you vacate an area, he's going to pull it down. He's going to go. I mean, and he burned them a few times by doing that. No question.
The thing that they're going to have to do on defense during this break, Vince, and we'll dive more into it, but this game, it was very evident from this game was you still have some assignment stuff you have to clean up.
Right.
And number 2,
absolutely,
you're going to have to figure something out at that second safety and second corner position because they're picking on Clarence Lewis and Tariq Bracy now. Cam Hart had another good game. He's got to stop the technical stuff, the tackle, the pass, the holding. It was unnecessary hold. He's still going to make those mistakes. That's just a fact. He's still a young corner. He's going to make those mistakes. He's just got to start cleaning those up. But the tackle, that's another one. It's like, you look and say it's third and 5. He's got that guy squared up 2-3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, behind the first down stick. If he just executes a normal tackle, Notre Dame forces a 3 and out. Instead, he misses. They go down, end up putting a field goal drive together to take the lead.
Right.
It's those kind of things that, to me, if this defense can clean that stuff up, and you said you listened to his podcast, Vince, and he talked about that play. So why don't you go ahead and give that rundown?
Yeah, he did. I know some of the people in our chat also listen to that Inside the Garage podcast, but I find it very intriguing. But he's like, man, I got to make that play. He goes, but I was about 2 steps away and I wanted to lay a big hit. And he goes, then I realized it was 3rd down. I was like, well, I just got to make the tackle. And he goes, then all of a sudden I was at the point of contact and I didn't do either one of them. He goes, I got caught in the middle, and it shows. Like when you watch that, you can tell that he's going for one thing and then he kind of switches it up to do another and then just completely whiffs. I mean, he got inside of his own head and he just didn't make the play, and it cost him. There's no question, because it was like there would have been, if he just makes a tackle or just grabs the guy and holds on to him, it's 4th down and it's a 3 and out. I mean, that's all he had to do. And he's right. All he had to do was make the tackle. But, I mean, it happens. I get where he's coming from. You just can't make those kinds of mistakes in that kind of a situation. That's all.
Vince, I came away just really impressed with this defensive line. It just like they really are. But I will say this. The one thing I need to see more from them from this game, they've got to make more play. They have to make more plays in the backfield on the ball.
Finish. They need to finish.
Yes.
Because there's times when there's guys there and they may slow them up a little bit, or if they can finish some of those plays, man, that's the next step for this group for sure. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely
so
agree.
definitely a lot to clean up. Definitely some things they got to get better on. At times, Virginia Tech just made plays. I mean,
Yeah.
look, Trey Turner's really good. We said that before.
He found some soft spots in the zone, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it just
And Burmeister played better than he's played all year throwing the ball. I mean, he made some really good throws that we're just not used to. I wasn't used to seeing him make. So part of that is and this is true of the Virginia Tech defense. I mean, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame wasn't the only team that played hard on Saturday night.
right.
Virginia Tech came to play. They
Yeah,
did.
sure
They
they did.
battled. They had
And they feed off that home
had
crowd.
no
I mean,
respect for Notre Dame. They thought that they were just going to come in because they watched the game before,
right.
and they watched Notre Dame kind of get hit in the mouth and kind of cower.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it says a lot about one thing that we talked about before the game. We said we're going to learn a lot about the leadership of this football team from a player level, right? Because we were disgusted by what we saw against Cincinnati. I have to say, whoever the leaders are on this team that were in the kids' faces all week and pushing, to see this team bounce back with the physical performance against and a poised physical performance, because I thought Virginia Tech was a little on the cheap shot, dirty side, and they tried to bait Notre Dame into some stuff, and Notre Dame's players didn't fall for it. But they played hard. I mean, Notre Dame went hit for hit against Virginia Tech, and by the end of the game, they made the bigger hits. They made the bigger plays, whether it was blocks, great runs, tackles, goal line stands, great special teams tackles on a night when otherwise the special teams were playing bad. Xavier Watts coming up with that big, huge stop at the end. I was nervous about that. I'm like, there's enough time for them to get a long return here and get in field goal range the way that Notre Dame's been playing.
Right.
On special teams. And Xavier just goes down there and blows the guy up. And that was awesome. So I was this team, and Kelly, it's like Kelly said it after the game, but he did it in such a childish, petty, whiny manner.
Yeah.
That it was kind of, it's like, come on, man, be better than that. Right. But he was right, though. This team has a lot of heart. Like these players have a lot of heart, and they were woefully unprepared emotionally and technically and schematically against Cincinnati. They were not unprepared emotionally for this game. And it looked like, because it was a road game, like they galvanized, they rallied around each other, they had each other's back, and they played their butts off. And they earned a win in a night where, if I were to list all the mistakes they made, and I'm talking about mistakes that cost them points on both sides of the ball, false starts, pick sixes, cornerbacks missing wide open tackles that instead of forcing a punt lead to field goals, clipping calls that take away. I mean, all the mistakes they made, you'd have been like, dude, they're going to lose by 20 to Virginia Tech. You know what I mean? They didn't. They won. Yeah. And it says a lot about the talent of this team, but it also says a lot about the resolve of this team. And that, to me, showed me a lot. But Vince, man, they needed that during the bye week.
So Agreed. Bad. I absolutely agree. And they needed to bring the fire this week. They needed it. Yeah. They needed it, because we would have had a lot different questions going into the bye week if they played the same way from an intensity level that they did against Cincinnati. You and I are having a completely different conversation right now. I mean, it just, we are. And that's where you start really questioning the leadership and, all of those things. Look, I get one game can be an anomaly. I get that can happen for sure. But it can't be a trend. And they bucked the trend this week, which was good because now you've got finals and you've got some mental stuff to take care of. And then you got to get back to the drawing board, with what you want to do, moving forward. Because look, again, it's Notre Dame. You're going to get the best shot from everybody. And a lot of these teams aren't going to have anything to lose when they play Notre Dame. All they're going to have is a chance to wreck whatever Notre Dame wants to do. Yeah. And people need to understand that, because that's the way teams play against Notre Dame.
Yeah. And this is the thing, to your Vince, this is a great super chat that came up just now as you were saying that. David Carpenter said, it seemed like Notre Dame responded to the chirping from Virginia Tech by giving as much as they got. I like seeing that. Is that what you saw in person, Brian? And that's exactly what Vince is saying. Like, they bounced back from that, and they weren't intimidated. They weren't hanging their heads. They weren't, Virginia Tech tried to get in their head the same way Cincinnati did. And this week, Notre Dame said, oh, okay, you want to come at that? Okay, I got a little something for you. And getting back in their faces, but not doing it in a, you shoved me, I'm going to shove you back. Now I got a 15-yard penalty against me.
Right.
Kind of way.
Right.
But like, okay, I'm going to creep up on you and I'm going to be saying stuff as opposed to using my hands and then get in trouble. I'm going to be like, okay, I got something for you. You want to cheap shot me? Wait till the next snap.
Exactly. They
Because I'm gonna
speak
bust you
with
in
their
the face. You know, I'm gonna
pads.
come at you. Oh, absolutely.
They speak with their pads and they speak with their play as
right.
opposed to just the dirty crap that I
Yeah.
don't like.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
Or the responding like I had to have my teammates back, and okay, yeah, but you just got 15-yard penalty.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Yes.
there was a lot of like there was a couple times Notre Dame got tackled on the Virginia Tech sideline, and the Virginia Tech players like in their faces, and the Notre Dame players just they came to their teammate, but they didn't start throwing people.
Right.
They came to their teammate and they like poised walked out, but like you could tell that they were Notre Dame players were like, yeah, okay, we got something for you. So
Right.
David, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a right way to respond to a team that's running their mouths and hitting you late and doing some of that stuff. And I thought Notre Dame's players responded to it, which is another example of a team that showed me a lot of maturity and leadership and poise in a moment where they could not have won without those things. And I think that, to me, big picture-wise, was the biggest takeaway from this game. If that can then springboard into the second half of the season, and if they can make some offensive adjustments, and we'll talk about what those look like these next couple of days. We'll talk about some of the schematic adjustments they need to make. I'm excited again for the second half. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
I was not going into last week's game. I was not looking forward to the second half of the season going into last week's game. But to see these players respond the way that they did, you know, to see Jack Cohn get benched and stay engaged and come back in like he'd been in the game the whole time. I mean, he walked onto the field at the end of that game like, okay, I got this. No big deal. I've been in here the whole time. You know, I mean, it just I enjoyed it. And this is what I thought this team could be.
Right.
And so we saw it. So that's going to do it for today's show. We're going to be back tomorrow for sure. We may do a show tonight. I'm not 100% sure, but that's why you need to hit the notification bell because we may do a hoop show tonight. We'll have to see. It just depends on my schedule, but I really would like to do that. Tomorrow we'll be back at 12:30. We're going to talk about sort of the offense at the midterm break. I'm going to give grades to each position group. We're going to talk about things that we need to see from this unit in the second half of the season, some of the adjustments we would be making if we were Notre Dame's coaches and we were self-scouting and things that we would do. We'll do the same thing for the defense on Thursday. And then, of course, Friday, Vince. You know what Friday is?
Mailbag Friday, baby.
That's right. That's right. So before you leave, hit the like button, hit the subscription button, hit the notification bell, check out the Irish Breakdown message board. We had a really good week of signups last week. I want to have another great week during the bye week of getting people signed up for that. Lots of good discussion going on over there. It was nice to get a win this weekend. There was a lot of frustration and negativity. So it was nice to get a win this weekend and kind of give some people, because hey, look, fans need a win going to the bye week too, right?
Yeah.
They need one too. So, check out boards at irishbreakdown.com. If you're on your bye week, you need some snacks, some really healthy, fun, incredibly tasty snacks. Go check out our Built Bar link. The Rocky Road Built Bar is back. And I am super stoked about that because I'm going to be buying some of those today. So, and of course, they still have some chocolate cookie dough, which is my new favorite. So check that out. If you use the promo code Irish Breakdown, you get a 10% discount off of your whole purchase. I saw somebody made another purchase today. So appreciate you all checking that out. But we'll be back tomorrow. Make sure you're ready to be with us. We'll try to incorporate some, a few more questions into tomorrow, the way tomorrow's show is going to be. But just if you got some things you want us to really talk about, just make sure you're there on Friday because we will be ready to answer it all. So for Vince, I'm Brian.
Well done.
You all have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you again very, very soon.